Good morning, everybody. How y'all doing today on this pre-weekend eve? It's Thursday, 8 a.m. here on the East Coast. Glad you all could join today, either live or following up on one of our repeat broadcasts. Love having you all in the room. I'm excited today because we're going to talk about something that I find just extremely important in people's lives, and that's preparing for the unexpected. And I want to start out by just saying, how do we prepare for the unexpected? We've all been on vacation, right? Maybe not lately, but we've all been on vacation. And not everything goes smoothly. But I can bet you're prepared for it. You threw the bug spray in there, the sunscreen. Let me hear your stories. What are your comments on your vacation stories where you prepared, but then an unexpected event happened? We just can't predict really what that's going to be, right? Have no idea. But I love hearing the stories of just those vacation trips. I remember one year my brother forgot to pack underwear. So he thought he was prepared, but forgot one of the most important things. So that's a funny story, Anthony, if you're listening. Sorry, man, everybody knows you forgot your underwear. But again, you can't predict really what's going to happen. So let's just take a survey here. Let's talk about your house now. In the comments, who has checked their fire extinguisher lately? Is it in date? Is it still good? Do you even know where it's at? Do you have one? Love to hear if you have one. Let's get 100% from everybody here on this. What about a tire jack? Do you have a tire jack in your car? Or a way to remove the lug nuts? Have you prepared for something like that? The ever famous batteries in the smoke detector. When's the last time you checked those? When's the last time you checked those smoke detectors, right? Or do you just wait for it to start beeping at like 2 a.m. and then wakes you up and you got to try to figure out, okay, how am I going to get to this? Where's the ladder? It's 2 a.m. I got to get up in 3 hours. Again, are you prepared? And then your first aid kit. Do you got one? Have you checked everything in it? Is it still within date? Is it still going to work if you needed that in an emergency? So these are just some common things around your house that you need just if something happens. You may never touch it in 20, 30, 40 years, but you have it just in case for that unexpected event. And that's really what we want to focus on today in your finances as well. Are you prepared for the unexpected? Do you know what's coming? No, you don't. None of us do. But we can do some key things to prepare us for that are going to impact our long-term strategy. And if you do a few of them, or especially all of them, you're going to be prepared for any unexpected event that life throws at you. And I like to talk about just a few of the foundational risks that we would see. One is the ever-present emergency fund. I hope everybody had one going into this environment. I really do. I know everybody didn't, but I truly hope that everybody did. And the question is, how much of an emergency fund do I have, or should I have? That's different for everybody. I'm going to cop out. It depends. It depends on your situation. It depends on your life and where you're at. You'll typically hear 3 to 6 months. That's a good place to start. Great place to start. But again, it depends. What does that include? Are you adding your subscriptions to cable and things like that? No, I want you to live. So 3 to 6 months of living expenses. And why 3 to 6 months? Where are we getting that number? Typically, that's how long it takes somebody to find a new job if they lost their job, if that was the unexpected event. So that's where that 3 to 6 months came from. But some people have jobs that are very secure. I could list off a bunch of professions that if you lost your job today, you could get a job tomorrow, and that is great. So your emergency fund may look a lot different than somebody that's in a profession that may take a little bit longer to get hired again. And that's okay. But it's, again, preparing for that and making sure you have the right emergency fund that fits your needs. Maybe you have a spouse that works as well. Then maybe if you lost your job, they can still support the family. And that's okay. Again, it is a different emergency fund for everybody, but 3 to 6 months is a great place to start. And I'm going to do you one better. I'm going to talk about retired individuals. Retired people, I recommend having 12 months in an emergency fund. Well, why 12 months, Brian? I'm retired. They're not even working anymore. Well, reason being is we don't want to touch our investments in a bad market. We want to ensure that if we see a downturn, we have time for those investments to grow without touching them. And typically a market takes 6 to 18 months to rebound. So a 12-month emergency fund for a retired person allows them to use those funds let their investments get that growth that they really need and not selling at a low point. So again, it's just preparing for those type of events and understanding how it works for your strategy. So let's layer on top of that emergency fund. What else would I need, Brian? What else would I look for? And I would say, do you have a line of credit? This is the second line of defense. So we've got our emergency fund, and we were just not prepared for 2020, were we? So we have that line of credit ready and willing and able to help us in a time of need. So we're not touching our investments. You notice I didn't say anything about taking a loan out on your 401k or cashing in all your stocks or bonds that you own. We put that money in those investments to invest it, not to use it in an emergency. So we want to try everything we can not to touch that. But so many people make that mistake. That's the first thing they do is they take a loan out, they cash out investments, and they wonder why they can't get their retirement savings on track. Because they didn't have the emergency fund. They didn't have a backup line of credit that they could rely on, so they don't have to put things on credit cards with high interest rates. They've got that backup. And then today we're going to talk with Turner. I'm going to talk a little bit about briefly now, but Turner's going to come in a little bit later, and we're going to just pick his brain about liability protection, homeowners and renters insurance. Do you understand it? Is it just some numbers on a sheet of paper? That's why we've got Turner. He's really going to help us out on this. But are you understanding what you purchased? Is it going to truly protect you, or is it just something somebody told you that you needed? And that's where I think is the key. Understanding what you have, so therefore you get the right things that you need. So homeowners, renters, do you understand it? Get it out now. Look at it. By the end of the day, figure out if it's right for your needs. You may have the same policy for the last 20 years. Just because you bought it then doesn't mean it's good now. There may be better options available. But I highly recommend getting with your insurance professionals and just asking questions and understanding what all of those numbers mean on that sheet of paper. But on to my favorite thing. That's the investments, right? That's why you're tuning into the show, No Bull with Bryan, right? Every Thursday at 8 a.m. You want to understand your investments. And I've got some really bad news for everybody today of what the problem is typically with people's investments. And what gets the most attention are the ups and downs of the market, right? I can promise you at 9:30, if you're into the market and finances, you're going to be looking, what's the market doing today? What's it doing an hour from now, 2 hours from now? But guess what? The biggest risk to your portfolio isn't the ups and downs daily. It's you. It's you. So keep that in mind. Your emotion truly dictates your investments and how they respond over time. So I'm sorry, everybody. It's me, it's you, it's our emotion that really gets involved rather than sticking with the fundamentals. Because if you have a properly constructed portfolio that's diversified, it's got quality investments in it, it matches your long-term goals, and it matches your risk tolerance, you've got a sound strategy. The only thing that's going to derail you is if you start changing things. Let's move everything to cash. I'm worried about next month. I'm worried about 2 months from now. This is the next big thing. This is what somebody told me I should get because they heard some news. We've all been there. We've all experienced that. And then you look back and you're like, why did I do that? Why in the crash of 2008 did I sell everything? And I just missed out on all those gains afterwards. Record longest bull market in history. So do you have a properly constructed portfolio, and take yourself out of the equation? Don't let your emotion dictate what's going on. And then as we get on later on in life, medical expenses, are you prepared for those? They are going up at astronomical rates, and I want to be sure you're prepared. And I don't know what that looks like. Again, it's different for everybody, but long-term care is huge right now. With Alzheimer's and dementia, are you prepared for those type of situations? Do you have the right strategy in place to make sure that your loved ones, are they taking care of you? Are you expecting to go into some kind of facility? Those are the things you want to have a conversation about. And then again, finally, providing for your family. Why are we putting all this money in these accounts and investing and saving up? And is it just for numbers on a piece of paper? No, we all have a purpose. We all have a why. What is your why? Is it for your family? Like I said, is it for the community and giving back? Is it for a charity? Is it for your church? Again, your story is different than everybody else that's listening today. But that's really what it's all about, is providing and making sure you have a right strategy in place to achieve that. And I want to make sure everybody achieves whatever that why is for them. So again, if you don't know what it is, you don't have a plan set up to achieve it, it's going to be really hard to get to. It's all about the planning, people. So how often should I be looking at this kind of stuff? All the stuff you talked about, Bryan, insurance policies and all of that. Minimum, I would say every 3 years. That is a good starting point. Just minimum every 3 years, or if there's a life-changing event. You got married, you got divorced, you had a kid, making sure everything's in order and your beneficiaries are correct and everything is good in that sense. But then you say, Bryan, well, I'm looking at all these policies. I don't get them, and I don't even know what I need. And that's where I would say, let's talk about what is an appropriate amount of life insurance. And again, there are different strategies. You can Google online and you'll find all kinds of different strategies. I'm going to focus on 2 right now that typically tend to come to my office as far as what most people understand. One is the multiple of income. It's pretty quick and easy to figure out. Typically, they recommend 7 to 10 times what your pre-tax salary is. What that means is that a life insurance you don't pay taxes on, so that averages out to about 12 to 15 years of living expenses based on your income, which isn't bad. Again, it's a great starting point to understand what you need for life insurance. But I really prefer the needs approach. And I use the acronym LIFE, L-I-F-E. Look at your liabilities, look at your income, look at your final expenses, and look at education or estate. Taking real numbers that pertain to you and figuring out what is the right amount for me. And it's different for everybody. Some people it's very high, some people it's very low. But again, it all depends on your situation. And you can get a more accurate number than just some arbitrary number of your income. Because again, it is different for everybody. So I'm going to keep harping on that. These are preparing you. It's not preparing everybody else, is preparing you. So it's got to fit your plan and make sense. And finally, before I bring Turner in onto this call to liven things up and excite us a little bit about insurance, I want to ensure that you all, regardless of whether you're 20 or 90, go over your legal documents as well, people. Make sure you have a will in place. Your beneficiaries are in place. You have powers of attorney for if something happens to you. 20-year-olds don't like to think about this. There's nothing going to happen to me. What do I need something like that for? What happens if you're in a car wreck and you're in the hospital and nobody can access your accounts because you didn't have documents set up to do that? So again, regardless of where you're at in life, these are all key things to consider and talk about with your loved ones. I know it's difficult sometimes and we don't always want to talk about them, but I wanted to ensure we are preparing for that unexpected thing that is going to occur in our lives. And it is going to happen. Like I said, we've all could talk about vacations and everything where something went wrong. We went to the beach, it rained. Hotel didn't have a room for us. There's always something. So prepare for it, just like you would your vacation. So with that, I am going to bring in Turner Walton of North Carolina Farm Bureau Insurance, and we're gonna dig into insurance a little bit more. So Turner, thank you for joining us this morning. How you doing today?
Thanks, Bryan. I appreciate the invitation. I'm doing well. I want to, before we get into the nitty gritty, if Anthony is listening, you're not alone, friend. I didn't bring any underwear on my honeymoon, so I had to go to a Charleston, South Carolina Walmart to pick up some boxer shorts. So these things happen, as you mentioned.
Yeah, that is definitely a story I will never forget. The look of disappointment in my mother's face, as well as my brother looking like whatever, it happens. So it is ingrained in my memory forever. More Anthony stories to come because I've got the show and he doesn't. So Turner, tell us before we get started. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Let my audience get to know a little bit more about what you do and who you are.
Sure. Appreciate the opportunity, Bryan. I grew up in Goldsboro, North Carolina, which is about an hour away from here down Highway 70 on the way to the beach. Grew up the son of an attorney and a education teacher, a exceptional children's specialist. and went to the University of North Carolina. Met my wife Corey there. Moved back home. Did some newspaper writing, business, and agriculture and military. Growing up in a military town. Went to East Carolina for a degree in sport management, and then moved back to Chapel Hill after I got married, and was a sports writer for 11 years at UNC. Contracts run out, life changes, people get pregnant, not me, but my wife, and you make a career shift, and now I'm in insurance going on 2.5 years.
Nice. Yeah. So I'm sure we lost all the Duke fans when you mentioned UNC. So I apologize, all you Duke fans out there. We'll get a Duke grad on here next week if we can. But I think, the funny thing about insurance, and you might see this as well, Turner, is that everyone thinks they don't need it until they need it.
Right.
And it's something you can't mess up, because once you need it, it's too late if you don't have it. And I think that is really the key that people sometimes miss in this, because they get so caught up in, this is wasted money or wasted expense. Why would I need it? And then it's just too late. So, but the biggest question that I get, and I'm sure you get a lot as well, is how do I lower my costs?
Mm-hmm.
How do I cut what I'm paying for my insurance? Give me some practical advice that I can use to lower my costs.
Well, there's a lot of things, Brian, that I kind of build into a quote, whether it's homeowners or auto, and I set a deductible at $1,000. So if you have a claim, the most you will pay out of pocket for a covered peril is $1,000 on your homeowner's policy. Some people say, well, that makes my premium go up. Yeah, it does. So we can set it at $2,500. So, but do you want to pay on the front end or the back end? You have to have insurance if you have a mortgage. You need to have insurance whether or not you have a mortgage. You have to have insurance to drive a car in the state of North Carolina. So how do you save money? Well, do you need a rental car if your car gets out of commission due to a covered claim? Or is that something that you can Uber or taxi or borrow a car from a friend in the meantime? That's an area that you can cut costs. If you just bought a new car, did you buy the gap insurance from the dealer, or do you need us to cover that? Because that will be more expensive. If you have a collision, would you rather pay on the front end or the back end, just like in homeowners insurance? I have a collision deductible of $250, so that's the most I will pay out of pocket. But I could lower my premium significantly if I raise that deductible. But I will say, it's a question of, do you want to pay on the front end or the back end? And one of the most effective sales strategies that I have, and being in sales like you are, Brian, we have to relate to people. And I don't mind sharing personal stories at all, because it helps me get to know my customer and helps them get to know me. I have a plug-in hybrid vehicle, a Ford Fusion that plugs in. And it comes with a travel charger that takes 6 to 8 hours to charge, or you can get the home charger installed that takes 2 hours. Well, until you get the home charger, you're going to use the travel charger at home. And they say, don't use an extension cord with this travel charger. They say that. Well, guess who used an extension cord with his travel charger and was woken one morning at 2 a.m. with fire trucks outside? And I said to my wife, this was me, if you hadn't figured that out, well, where are the fire department? Where are they? And my wife said, they're here. They're at our house. I had tucked that charger underneath a bay window, an alcove outside. It was out of the rain, but sparks flew. And suddenly there's smoke under the house. Luckily, it wasn't right up against the house. So we had some very minor smoke damage that was pressure washed away outside, but it was almost a disaster. And the very next day, I lowered my deductible on my homeowner's policy from $2,500 to $1,000, because if there is fire damage, I don't want to have to make that decision. Well, how do I feel about paying $2,500 out of pocket versus $1,000? So you talk about preparing for the unexpected. Sometimes the unexpected hits you before you're prepared for it, but then you have to go and say, what's going to happen the next time? How am I going to be prepared for the next time?
Right. It's readjusting that strategy for sure. David, thanks for joining us in the room. Sandra, Karen, we got a bunch of people just saying good morning to us. Lori, good morning to you as well. Glad you guys could join us today, learn a little bit more about insurance. So Turner, talking about lowering costs as well, what are some practical things that we could do around our house that you're going to evaluate or examine, that you're going to say, that's something that you want to be sure to have because it actually is going to help you when we do apply for some kind of insurance or premium?
Sure. The easiest thing is, do you have smoke detectors? There's a quick, with us, $10 discount. That's not a lot, but it adds up. Do you have a fire alarm, burglar alarm system? Do you have a CPI, an ADT, a Simply Safe? Let your agent know, because there is a discount there as well. How is your home built? It's cheaper to insure a brick veneer home than a frame home, which most of our homes are frame homes these days. But just let somebody know, because when we're doing a quote for you or doing a cost evaluation, that will help you as well. So I'm looking at my homeowner's policy now. Liability, you talked about preparing for the unexpected, and liability. Liability is pretty cheap. So there's not a ton of difference between $100,000 of liability coverage and $1 million of liability coverage. If someone slips and falls at your house, maybe it's your fault, maybe it's their fault. You want to have liability coverage. But when you talk about cutting costs, look at, do you have a home warranty when you bought your home? Is there some overlap with the insurance coverage there? There are things that a home warranty covers that a regular standard HO3 homeowner's policy won't cover, and there's some overlap. So make sure you let your agent know what you have in place already, what you're planning to have in place. Do you have smoke detectors, an alarm system, a fire extinguisher? And let people know where the company might give you a discount. Now, raising a deductible will cut that premium cost. If you have a minimum deductible, like a 500 or 1,000, there may be a deductible charge. But then again, it's a question of which side do you want to pay on, the front end or the back end.
And what about, I get this a lot as well, as the bundling. Should we be, is that really a way to save, or is it, better for us to go out and shop both separately?
Well, it's certainly worth shopping both separately, because there may be in situations where a car insurance company can undercut us. There may be a situation where if you have an older home, you're less likely to get a discount on the home side, but you may on the auto side. But I tell people all the time, if you have a standalone auto policy and you're renting an apartment, a renter's policy is extremely inexpensive, and it will pay for itself and more if you bundle that with an auto policy. So you certainly need to take a look, because it could be a difference of $120, $150, $200 on the homeowner side if you bundle in an auto as well.
So I actually, Turner, we got a question here, and I'm gonna pop it up there. They are asking you, many home buyers plan to upgrade their home when they close. Should they tell their insurance agent they plan to renovate a kitchen or a bathroom?
Yes. Well, I think it's worth, you don't have to tell them at the time, because we're going to insure the dwelling that you have at the time. But what I do with my customers, and I'm required to do, is every 3 to 5 years check in and say, hey, have you made any upgrades? Have you made any changes? Have we added any additional structures to the property? Because that's all built in to the policy. But yes, we're going to insure the dwelling as it is. But if you say, hey, we renovated the kitchen, the floors are nicer, or we added an addition on to the back of the house, or we screened in a porch, or we made another room, you add square footage, let your insurance agent know. There is a built-in, with us, and I believe it to be true with every insurance company, inflation protection and appreciation protection. So you will notice that the coverage on your home, coverage A for the dwelling, that coverage increases 3 to 4% every year, just to account for inflation and appreciation. But if you add an addition onto your home and square footage, let your insurance agent know.
Yeah, that's a great question and great advice, Turner. Speaking of that as well, in this area, I think we can both speak to it. There are a lot of people that have a home and then move out and start renting it, or it sits vacant while they try to figure out what they're going to do with it. Is that something that their insurance agent needs to know? Well, I guess, what issues or problems could they have if they just say, you know what, it's cheaper for me to keep my old residential insurance on it when I live there, even though I'm going to use it as a rental? Is that an issue that potentially could cause some bite back in the future?
It could, and we need to know if an owner is occupying a home or not, if they're renting it out, if it's vacant or not, because there can be some liability issues that come up. And so we need to know on the front end if someone is not going to be occupying a home. It changes the kind of policy from a homeowner's policy because the homeowner is not living in to a dwelling policy. It's similar coverages, but there may be some differences because you're going to shift some liability, right? If you're renting a home, you want your renter, and if I want every landlord and landlady to know this, require renter's insurance because you want liability to be on your tenant if they were to mess something up and burn down the house that you're renting out. So you're going to shift liability to that person. And what we will do is the home that you're living in will have a standard homeowners policy. We're going to write liability and extend it from that to your rental property.
That's great advice. And what about the people that are doing like the Airbnb or for the weekends? Is it the same philosophy there, or is that a little bit different?
Yeah, just let your insurance agent know that we build in coverage there, that you're going to have tenants that aren't long-term necessarily, but maybe for a week or a weekend or, maybe 2 weeks, but we're not talking about 6 months to a year. Let your insurance agent know that that's what's going on because we need to cover for different people coming in and out of your house.
Yep, that's great advice. Yeah, I think people a lot of times will miss that it's a great way to earn a little extra income if you have it. But if something goes wrong, all that money that you've earned off it over the years could be gone very quickly if you don't have the right insurance in place to handle the situation. So that is great questions, everybody. Keep them coming. Like I said, I am going to get to as many as I can. I love that you guys are asking questions. That's great. And Turner is here to answer it. As you can see, he's extremely knowledgeable. Turner, though, I want to shift gears a little bit here. I think we all are experiencing this now in their current environment, working from home.
Yeah.
Where a lot of us now are working from home, and it might become the new norm for a lot of people. How does that impact insurance if I'm at home all day?
Well, the way that we code, for example, auto insurance, if you drive more than 10 miles to commute, you're coded one way. If you drive 1 to 10 miles to work, you're coded another way. If you just drive for pleasure or you work from home, you're coded another way. And I'll be honest with you, Brian, almost everybody that I quote right now, I'm coding for pleasure because it seems like the default is working from home. And I think you mentioned it. It may be that we are finding that what is an office anymore? What's the necessity of an office when we get on the other side of this, hopefully? So we sent out dividends for a couple of months, 20% back on 2 months of premium. Just say, hey, we know that times are strange. You're not driving as much. So here's a little kickback. But if you are working from home, let your insurance agent know because that will save you money because it's cheaper to insure a car for pleasure than one that you're driving to and from work every day. And also, and this is more your area than mine, Brian, but make sure that you talk to your accountant about an area that you have your home for a home office because that can save you money at tax time.
Exactly. There's so many different things that a lot of people don't think about as far as saving money. So if you are now working from home, Turner is telling you, call your insurance agent, let them know that you are no longer driving an hour and a half to work every day. It could save you a little bit of money right now, right today. Get on the phone, send him an email. I know Turner's extremely responsive. Text him. There's so many ways to get a hold of him. There's so many ways to save. It's just making sure you take the initiative and do it. So Turner, I am racking my brain for insurance questions, but you are the expert. Tell me what I've missed. Tell me some other tips or advice you just want to get out there to the viewers before we wrap it up today.
So the state minimum in North Carolina for auto insurance, to drive a car, you have to have liability. You don't have to have comprehensive other than collision insurance or collision insurance. That protects you in the event that something happens to your car. You have to have liability in the event you cause an accident or property damage or an injury to another person. The state minimums are for bodily injury, $30,000 per person, $60,000 per occurrence. So if you hit someone and there are two people in that car, the insurance will pay up to $30,000 per person, up to $60,000 per occurrence. That's the minimum that the state will allow you to drive around with. For property damage, it's $25,000. That's the minimum. I know that people just need to get insurance to get on the road, but those state minimums are not enough. Because if you hit a 2021 Chevy Tahoe and total it, not only are you going to be out of car, but you're going to owe much more than $25,000 to replace that car if you are at fault. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say that is great advice, because people think the minimum is saving them so much money, and then until they don't understand those numbers, and they don't realize that if they total the other car, their insurance is only going to pay $25,000 of that. They're not going to pay the $80,000-$60,000 that the car actually costs, and it's coming back to the policy owner, not the insurance.
That's right, Brian. And by default, when you set those numbers at a minimum, your uninsured, underinsured motorist coverage, the coverage that protects you in the event someone who's uninsured or underinsured, that's where those numbers stop as well. So if you are driving that 2021 Tahoe and someone who's uninsured hits you, you may only get $25,000. And beyond that, so I set the minimum for me is more than the state minimum, $100,000 per person, $300,000 per occurrence, $100,000 of property damage. That's where I start. And beyond that, we need to talk about an umbrella policy, which is very cheap, which comes in over your home and auto and your rental properties as well, adding liability coverage. So if you have gaps in that coverage, if you have areas that you need more coverage because you own several rental properties and we're extending liability from one home to, say, 10 rental properties, an umbrella policy for $1 million or $2 million of liability is relatively inexpensive in the grand scheme of things, and that can protect you immensely.
Now, that is great advice, Turner. I really appreciate everything that you've provided today. As you can see, Turner knows his stuff. He really is involved. He really cares for the people he works with and understands the insurance game more than most that I know. So please, if you have any questions, I'm sure Turner would have no problems with you reaching out to him. And I'm going to give him a moment here in a second to give you his information on how you could actually reach out to him if you needed to chat a little bit more. But hopefully you can take some of the advice we've given today and just go review your policy at a minimum. Just look at it. Maybe take some of the things that we talked about today and get a better understanding of what you have. So Turner, before I let you go, please tell people if they needed to get a hold of you or wanted to reach out to you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, you can send me an email, turner.walston@ncfb, like North Carolina Farm Bureau, INS, like insurance.com. turner.walston@ncfbins.com. You can text or call me, 919-619-8686. That's my cell. The office is 919-544-4953. We are at 2902 South Miami Boulevard here in Durham. If you're going to come in, please wear a mask. We're trying to do our part here. But I can do a lot via Zoom or text or phone call. I'm happy to talk to you. Look, whether you're my customer or not, I know that even if you don't insure with me, if I help you out with some advice or a question, you'll tell somebody down the line. So I'm not worried about that. But I'd love to talk to people. And Brian, we know right now that people are refinancing because the rates have been good, although they are creeping up a little bit. You might as well take a look at your entire insurance package when you refinance, because you're going to be lowering that mortgage payment every month. So you might as well take a look at the insurance that's part of that escrow as well.
That's great advice, Turner. Well, I appreciate you coming on today. Like I said, I appreciate all the advice that you've given everybody. I'm sure I learned a few things today as well, and I'm guaranteeing my audience did. But I appreciate you. I appreciate all you do. Again, everybody, reach out to Turner if you had any more questions in regards to your personal insurance situation, and just get a better understanding of what you're like. So thanks, Turner. I appreciate it. You have a great day.
Thanks, Brian. You're a rock star. Appreciate you.
See you, man. All right, everybody. So we're wrapping it up today. Hopefully you got some great information there from Turner, as well as what we covered earlier in the show. I want to just make sure, tune in tomorrow. It is Joe's last show on Wake Up to the Vibe, so don't miss that. He's going out with a bang, I'm sure. And then Keith's got his sports show. So all you sports fanatics out there, don't miss Keith as well tomorrow morning. Looking forward, though, to catching you all next week. Again, any questions, reach out. Throw some comments in there. Share with your friends. Like, love, do whatever you can to get the word out there. We want to educate the world and just be an inspiration to people in their finances and make sure they're doing the right things with their money with a noble approach. So thank you all for joining today, and I will catch you next Thursday at 8 a.m.